Welcome to Cutting for Sign. Today's guest is Nick Hurndon. You are the subject of the short film A Childhood on Fire, which chronicles how you and your two brothers were set on fire by your stepfather when you were a child. It also explores the effects that childhood abuse has had on you as an adult and your purpose of interrupting cycles of violence through generations. The film was an official selection at several film festivals, including San Francisco Film Festival, DOC, NYC, and Aesthetica. In 2019, you became the World Masters weightlifting champion of your division. You're the owner of Magnus Strength and Conditioning, as well as certified hard style kettlebell instructor, Marine veteran, competitive judoka, and CrossFitter. You're the father of two sons, and you like kittens, sushi, blood meridian, and believe that transcendental stoicism is the key to a better life. Welcome, Nick. Glad you made it. Did I say your last name correctly, Hurndon?
Hurndon, yeah.
Hurndon. Okay, great. Fantastic. Well, first of all, you're amongst friends. We're both big Cormac McCarthy nerds, and kind of get real like nitty gritty with that guy.
Yeah. I just read Blood Meridian. Like I finished it like 3 or 4 weeks ago. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah.
I reread it last year. It's been a while. It'd been probably, 7, maybe a decade since I read it the first time. First time I read it, I had to put it down several times. It's just too violent, too gory for me.
And I read it the first time about a decade ago, and I don't know. I was just like blown away. I'm at a point now where I'm questioning whether or not it's my favorite Cormac McCarthy, because I've read a lot more since that.
Yeah. What would you say? What's standing out to you right now?
All the Pretty Horses. Like I don't know.
Yeah. That was the first one I read, man. Yeah. Have you read Sutri? You haven't read Sutri, have you?
I believe I've read that one too. Yeah, that's the what is that one about?
It's from what I understand, it kind of chronicled Cormac McCarthy's own youth, and it's just about a guy in Tennessee roaming and drinking and figuring out life. But it's.
No, I haven't read that one.
Okay, it's really long too. It was like twice as long as his other books, but anyway.
Yeah. Well, we could probably spend an hour at least on that literature.
Cormac McCarthy podcast.
Guys smoking
he's
pipes
otherworldly, man. Blood Meridian, just real quick note on it is, I've never read a book that at the same time as being grounded and rooted in violence had this almost cosmic perspective of what we're doing here on Earth, and to do that through the way he observes landscapes. Even it was one of the most amazing reads I've ever experienced.
People are saying it might be the most important novel written in the English language right now. I mean, they're like they're talking about Melville in the same sentences around him, and so
particularly Blood Meridian, though.
Blood Meridian in particular, and
wow.
I mean, that's a tall drink of water, right?
When people ask me that, like, a book recommendation, and I always want to recommend that book.
Yeah.
I'm always reluctant to recommend it, because I think like people can get into it and just kind of like, man, this book is nightmarish. Is this guy a psycho?
Yeah.
What? Like,
Yeah.
All right. Good.
So
get the Blood Meridian out of the system. Thanks, Ron.
anyone who wants to read that book, proceed with caution. Well, Nick, man, I met you kind of on accident a few months ago at our local judo / jiu-jitsu dojo. And then I don't even know how I started following you on Instagram, but somewhere in there, the short film that I had mentioned was premiered on the Guardian website, and I remember where I was when I watched it, because at the time I was part owner in a small business downtown here in Portland. And I had closed up shop. I had like the shop like shut down, and I was cleaning, good old fashioned like mopping and sweeping this place, and had the film playing on over the loudspeakers in the place. and found myself really emotional, crying, um, um, just unable to, and still unable to articulate what that must have been like for you to have suffered the abuse that I mentioned before. And I reached out to you on Instagram. I think maybe what I had done was like put it all together and just was like, man, thank you for sharing your story. I mean, the fact that story was made and you were brave enough to share it is life-changing, because one thing Daniel and I talk about often is changing the trajectory that our life could take if we don't do things. We're born into certain systems, cultures, families, communities. There's a certain system that wants to keep you in that path in a certain way. And many of us try dramatic things to get out of those things, to break those patterns, to break patterns of abuse, to break patterns of addiction, even certain things like in my world, my parents were married and divorced 13 times between the two of them. So I was just trying to like not continue the cycle, that kind of thing, which I didn't do, by the way. I failed. But
I'm going to keep bringing it up, Ronald. You need to be married 6 more times for you to
thanks.
technically fail.
Appreciate that. So, man, I mean, that's it's a conscious choice for you. So, and then you're a dad, and we're not want to get into that not, and you're a dad. Your parenting is focused under the spotlight quite a bit in that. And I wanted to talk about that a bunch more. So, my launching pad for us right now is, man, you grew up in a place that really focused on masculine archetypes. And we talked a little bit about this over the phone, and you experienced the effects of toxic masculinity. Then you went into a 20-year career, roughly, of uber masculinity, warrior spirit, warrior. I mean, that was your job.
Yeah.
That was your job. And then you became a dad, and one of your children, I'll let you tell this story, it has now chosen a different pronoun than they were born with. And we live in a world where this is all new territory for us. But knowing what I know a little bit about my experience and the people I grew up with, I would not have guessed your child. I mean, first of all, your child had to have had a deep sense of safety, an incredible sense of safety for them to even begin that conversation with you. Because I think a lot of times a child would have felt those feelings, had been to have those questions, and not even brought them up. I grew up in a church culture, and I knew countless men and women, boys and girls, who were telling me or our friends that they might have had certain feelings about their orientation or any of those things, and were terrified to speak to their father for various reasons. So let's just start there. Like, tell me a little bit about how you were able to turn that corner, make that shift. I don't even know if those are the right words to describe it, but to give how did you begin to provide the safety to your family, your kids in particular, to give them the freedom to have these conversations as children?
I would say probably a lot of failure in my life in different places, and a lot of self-reflection to get me to a place to really begin to think about what kind of parent, father I wanted to be to my kids. And I was I don't know if it's by today's standards. I mean, I was a late parent. I didn't have Magnus, my oldest, until I was 34 or 35 years old. By that time, I had already gone through 15 years or so in the Marine Corps. So, I was at the the latter part of my career, and you know, I had already been to war a couple of times, I was married, and I didn't know it at the time, but, sort of at the end of my marriage, that didn't manifest itself until later. And when I got to that place where I was divorced or divorcing, I was retired from the Marine Corps, I kind of used that as an opportunity to just kind of reset my life. I mean, I think I had already started to do that a little bit, but really I kind of looked at it as this is an opportunity for things to go really, really well for me as a person and as a, most importantly as a father. But it could also be a situation where they go south really fast as well. I could have a toxic relationship with my kids or not be non-existent. I could have a bad relationship with their mother. Like, all of these things could come up, and I didn't want any of that to happen. Some of that self-reflection happened because, or I don't even want to say it was self-reflection, happened because I was sort of pulled into a situation to face some of the things that I hadn't faced before. Issues of PTSD and depression coming out of being in Iraq a decade before that, all of the issues with my childhood and my relationship with my parents and my former stepfather that for the most part had been swept under the rug. And being faced with divorce and retirement and my business and all of these major issues put me at a place where for the first time I think I was willing to listen to that nagging voice in the back of my head that there were issues that needed to be faced and dealt with, and also having people tell me that, like, you should get help, you should talk to somebody, you should do something. And as you mentioned in the intro, coming from environments of hyper masculinity, toxic masculinity, you just didn't seek help. There was no time, you never went and talked to a therapist. You didn't talk to your partner about the problems in your life or the things that were going on. You didn't talk to your fellow platoon mates or any of those sorts of things. I wasn't in that kind of culture, and I never did that. It was stiff upper lip, straighten up your back and, march on sort of thing. And I knew I couldn't do that anymore. And more importantly, I didn't want my sons to be taught that sort of approach to their life and the relationships that they're going to have with me.
And why,
yeah,
if you don't mind me stopping you real quick, can you tease that out a little bit more, how you knew that you couldn't do that anymore?
How I couldn't, like, hide those things or not face them.
Yeah. How did you know? How did you become aware? What? Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I kind of got faced with three things all at once. I was literally in the midst of retiring from the Marine Corps, going through a divorce, moving to a new city, and my business had been open for a couple of years at that point, but I was going to be more involved in my business, or my hope was that I was going to be more involved in my business.
Yeah.
And all of those stressors, were weighing down on me all at once. And, I still had this hope at the time of patching things up with my ex-wife and making things work. And, we had gone to see a marriage counselor and sat down and, like, filled out the documents to talk about what had been going on. And then sitting down in front of her and just talking about our life and our marriage and all of the stuff. And she was really the first person that was, like, separate from the things that were going on with my relationship and retirement and all of that, is that, kind of this record scratch, like, wait a minute, your childhood, wait a minute, you've spent 20 years in the Marine Corps. Like, all of these things are happening. You need to get help and you need to do this. And
Wow.
it still wasn't it still wasn't an ownership on my part that like I needed to do this for myself, or I needed to do this for my kids or whatever. I kind of was like, oh, I'm going to tough everything out and I'm just going to be a good dad by toughing stuff out and going forward. And after that conversation and really thinking about that, I took the first steps to begin getting individual help for myself, and then really starting to think about, like, how do I like actually live that life for my kids? What are the things that I need to start doing? What are the things that I didn't have as a kid myself and that I wanted as a child from my father and from my parents? And how do I provide those things? I really saw it probably for the first time in that moment, that this is really an opportunity for me. This is an opportunity to reset my life and reset how I'm going to be as a parent.
That's amazing. Yeah. I think a lot of guys would get to that moment and go, I don't need help,
yeah,
doc, you're a quack, and all the other things we say. But you didn't.
And I told myself that a bunch of times before that. I don't need help. I don't need anything.
Yeah.
I'd made it that long, at least believing I had done everything by myself.
Sure.
And had made it, and it just wasn't.
Sure. So a couple practical things. Number one, what was your first step of doing what she said? Did you go get a therapist yourself? Did you go to a support group? What was kind of the nuts and bolts for that for you?
Within the next 6 months to a year, maybe, I think the first thing was finding a therapist, finding somebody that I was comfortable with, I could sit down and begin talking to, which I was really, really reluctant to do that.
Why is that?
Yeah, it was because like I just hadn't been raised in that culture, and I had coming from the Marine Corps at a time when, there was heavy reluctance to talk about PTSD, and the ideas of PTSD, depression, suicide, all of those things were weaknesses. And there were still lots of people that were saying that, anybody that admitted to that, talked about that, did that, they were weak. And that's all it was. And so I had spent my, the last 8 years in the Marine Corps after my time in Iraq, really just sweeping all that under the rug, and probably having that voice in the back of my head saying that, oh, if I go say that, I'm feeling a certain sort of way, or this has affected me negatively, that I'm going to be seen as weak. And since my childhood, that was probably the most important thing for me, was to never appear weak, because, that's when you became a victim, or that's when you get preyed upon if you ever appeared weak. And I just didn't want that to happen.
Wow, it's really interesting. I hear stats fairly often about the suicide rate in the armed forces, and it sounds like you've been on this mental health care, self-care path for a good while now. And I've seen you also speak about online a little bit about the kind of other challenges combat veterans or soldiers can face, such as discrimination in particular. And the reason I bring all those things up is what can a soldier do now, or a vet do now that this stuff is beginning to unravel? They're taking the pressure off of the labels around the need for mental health and the need for therapy or any of those other modalities, like, someone's listening, is this something you're really just like, hey guys, like, in a certain way, just suck it up, go get help. Stop sucking it up on your own, like, go talk to somebody.
I think that I would say that, everybody should address it how they see fit. I don't know that, I'm necessarily advocating for therapy. Combat veterans particularly, have an issue of relating to people that haven't been in the same experience as them. And that was a difficulty for me coming back to the States. And for a long period of time, really the only people that I felt a connection with or could understand me were people that were there, people that had gone through the same thing and could experience some of the things that I didn't even really understand myself, both the fears and disappointments that come in war, and also the pleasure and the adventure and all of these other things that come with it as well. And I think many combat veterans, including myself, would talk about, and I'll say this now, that like, I really loved being in war. I really did. And I also found myself at times never wanting to go back. There was this kind of dueling feelings around my experience there. And I think a lot of that came out of a lot of the draw to go back was, some of the things that young people join the military for in the first place, adventure and danger and things like that. But the connection that you have with the people that you serve with in there, probably more than anything else. And I would say to answer your question more directly would be, one of the things that I wish I would have done was to connect with those people more about what I was experiencing, what I was feeling, those sorts of things. And
while you were in the military?
While I was in,
yeah.
And while you're in and you're surrounded by a lot of veterans and people that have that same experience, I mean, I think it's easy to take it for granted. You can kind of hang out with those people and do things with them, but you may not be talking directly about your feelings around being in war, returning to the States, what you went through, all of those sorts of things. And that piece of it, I didn't really do. I was still friends with a lot of people, and I saw them and maybe grabbed a drink with them or went to work with them or whatever, but we weren't actually, I guess, really facing our experience and how it affected us head on. And that is where I would say that, combat veterans today, if they're not ready to go see a therapist or do something like that, that they find other combat veterans and share their experiences, however that happens. I stumbled across a veteran here in Portland who I'm friends with now, this guy Paul, who's an artist, and he was doing this oil painting series and with another artist, and another veteran that was a member of my gym, found out I was a veteran and was like, hey, this guy's looking for models for this series. And I connected with him. I didn't know him. We talked for a little bit and decided that I would model for one of his paintings. And that ended up being a great experience for me because I was new to Portland. It gave me a 12 month period where I was like hanging out with this guy and he was doing his work. And we just got to talk about the Navy and the Marine Corps and all of these things. And I, found myself talking to somebody who was a veteran and had some similar experiences as me, in a kind of, low stakes, no pressure environment. And we became friends out of that. And unbeknownst
What were
to me.
those? What were those paintings of? What was it?
So Paul and Chris, the two artists that were involved in it, painted and sculpted a handful of veterans. I don't know how many they did, maybe half a dozen or 10 or so. The idea was, I'm probably butchering this a little bit, but was to take veterans from different time frames. I mean, there was World War II veterans and Vietnam veterans and Iraq War and stuff, have conversations with them while they were painting and sculpting and talking about what their experience was in the military. And then to take the work that they had done and that had gone on tour around the country and had been in different places. And it was to start a conversation with the civilian community and the veteran community about separating stereotypes about combat veterans and their place in the broader community.
It reminds me of this art project that I read, I think a magazine article on one time. It was a couple years ago, but it was, and maybe you heard of it, but some sort of art creative crew went in and got some volunteers who were all in different aspects of the military. They were all soldiers, and they had all seen combat. And the idea was each one would make a mask. And so it was like clay, and you would just make a mask, right? And then they had different colors of clay, and you'd paint the mask and stuff, and it was so cool, man, because it's predictable probably, but a bunch of them were like, "Fuck this! I don't care about it. It's artsy fartsy," and then the whole story was that those people who were most resistant, they did some freaking great work. Like, it was not only a genuine piece of art, but it was like really good and interesting. And it was their journey, like recognizing how the creative process, I know this is different than what you did, but it was still spoke, I think, to something similar, bridging that gap between some of these stigmas. Yeah. Awesome stuff.
Yeah, I would imagine that they had the same experience. Like, I had never really been involved in artistic in that way, and never guessed that posing for these artists while they did their work and just talking with them about it would be such a healing experience, or at least the beginning of a healing experience for me.
Wow. Yeah, that was, man, that's awesome.
There's somewhere we can see his work. Can we look him up?
Yeah, Paul Rutz is the artist, and
cool.
I'm sure some of it is up on his site. He's local here to Portland, and the sculptor's name is Christopher Wagner. I don't know if he's still local to Portland, and I actually bought one of the pieces, and I have at my house, and
nice.
I don't know where all of the other pieces are. That he may still have some of them, and they may be in different places. But
that's great.
Yeah,
it's really great. So then you started to talk about things that you wanted to do differently than your stepfather. And let's get into that a little bit. Some of the nuts and bolts. Like when you would say, I want to do it differently, what did you imagine? And then what did you plan? And then what did you do? To give you a little background, my dad left when I was 3, and he was in and out of my life like over and over. And he died when he was 50 years old. I was in my early 20s. And there were year stretches of him not being around. And often his pattern was, son, next time I see you, I promise we're going to do this, this, and this. We're going to go hunting. We're going to get your truck fixed. We're going to do. And he never fulfilled a single promise, not a single one. And it took me a long time to stop believing those promises. And then it took me a long time to realize that I was doing the same thing to myself. Like, I would make promises to myself or to people and to not fulfill it. And I realized, like, it's probably he genuinely thought he was going to do those things and wanted to, and just didn't have the emotional, mental tools to then fulfill them. Life would happen. Who knows what? I don't know. I'm not trying to make excuses for him, but I realized as I became an adult, like, oh, there needs to be a certain kind of skill set that's involved to fulfilling the things I'm going to say I'm going to do. And so I'm really curious about what were those things coming up for you as a dad and as a man for your family?
Well, I would say, yeah, I had a very similar experience with my father, in making promises and very rarely coming through on those, and just not really being, not really showing up and being there. And I think the first thing that I wanted to do, and maybe it was the easiest, I'm not really sure, was just telling my kids how I felt. I mean, it's as simple as that. Like, having the ability to tell them how I felt, what I was going through, and talking about my love for them and what I thought about them as a person, and beyond just, if they played a sport or something, and hey, you had a good game, or you got an A on your report card and good job, but how beautiful they are, how smart they are, any of those things. I mean, I guess even if they weren't smart, that I still loved them and I was connected to them and they were important to me. I wanted to constantly tell them that. I wanted them to know and understand that in every place that they went, that whatever they were facing in the world, whatever was going on, that they knew that I was always there for them, and that my love was true and unbreakable. There was nothing that was going to separate that. And going through some of the things that we talked about earlier, I kind of began to realize that nobody had really done that for me as a kid. And some of this came out in the film. We talked about writing notes, and me writing notes to my sons, and
Oh, that's what you were reading in there. I didn't put that together for some reason. That's you writing notes to your sons.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. And those were the real notes that you'd written from like the past that you were holding up?
Yeah, I keep.
Oh, that's cool.
Almost all of them. I'm assuming all of them. All of them that I've written. I have a box in the house that I just put them in, and when they get older or whatever, they'll be able to keep those and do whatever they want to do with them. But just there were things like that like my dad never did, my mom never did, other adults in my life never did that. They didn't do it verbally, they didn't write it down, they didn't have that. When I came home from school, nobody ever asked me how my day was, what I learned, what was going on, none of those things. And I just accepted that. I just thought that's how parents did things, and like I didn't even really pay it any mind until I, way later in my life, until I started to experience, oh wait, there's, I have friends who pick up the phone and have conversations with their parents, or, their parents are saying nice things, showing up to graduations, all of these like, probably normal things for many, many people, but not for me. And so I wanted to be really deliberate about that. I wanted it to be, verbal. I wanted it to be in writing. I wanted it to be physical.
Wow.
And that's kind of where like the lunch note thing came. And I didn't have a specific plan. Like, I'm going to write this note. Some of those notes came out of stuff we were reading together, experience we had, things that I was going through or they were going through.
That's great.
Yeah. And
good idea, man.
Yeah. And I mean, I even started doing it, Magnus, my oldest, who's 10 now, was a really early reader. And so, they could read. I mean, 5 years ago, when they were 4 or 5 years old, they could read the notes. Wow. And
Nick, that kind of reminds me, or it reminds me of a really personal experience that I had with something similar. Because you said you never know what's going to happen with those notes. You're going to put them in a box and then they might read them later. I was married for about 9 years, and my now ex-wife, she would write notes a lot, and she would sometimes, like you said, they would just be, hey, hope you have a good day. Sometimes they would be communicating business types, logistical stuff about our day, and then the total extreme, opposite extreme of full on like love, notes. But point is she was a note leaver, and I just got in a habit of keeping them, and I put them in a folder, right? And then our whole marriage, I probably have 150 of these things. Some of them full pages, some of them on little scraps, but she had beautiful handwriting, and it inspired me to keep them. And then we ended up not being together, and kind of I was noticing I wasn't grieving quite as healthfully as I knew I should, and I had this choice to either take a left and just be like, fuck it, I'm gonna go about my life. And then the other one was, I've got this pile of notes, and I basically just sat down over a few months. I had them out, and I just read every one. I just promised myself I'd read every one. And it was such a powerful experience because it was a concentrated dose of her love for me, and it triggered grief, but it also gave me a perspective on our whole relationship that I didn't see. I saw how much she showed up, and I just missed that part when we were going through it. And it was invaluable, man. It was invaluable. And I know that's a different situation than yours, but it's certainly, I bet those notes come in to play a special role later in life.
No, I think that's great. And you use the phrase triggering grief, and, sometimes we hear that word trigger and it's used in such a negative way. But
right.
I know for me, like, all of the things I went through as a child, and then even, some of my experiences in the Marine Corps, I never had the trigger to process the grief, which was necessary.
Yeah. Whoa.
And maybe with the death of loved ones or the ends of relationships, that, understanding and knowing, or at least learning, then understanding and knowing that, processing grief is normal and it's okay. And whatever does that for you is, maybe therapeutic and healing. And obviously I'm not writing the notes to trigger grief.
Right.
I am hoping that it will trigger some sort of, emotional response that they can connect to and be okay with that. And grief is just another one of those emotions that is okay to experience and process.
It's necessary in a lot of ways. Grief.
Yeah, necessary. Yeah.
I was thinking, as Daniel was talking about how powerful those notes are going to be for your kids in the future. You don't even know when. It's almost like you bought a bond, right? Like a treasury bond. Like you bought it in the hopes that one day in the far future, it's going to be worth something really valuable and for your kids. And that's one of those things, man, that's going to pay dividends into the future, I'm sure.
Yeah. And I believe, I don't know, because they're still pretty young, but I think it's paying now, and I think it's going to, I think you're right. And I think it's going to pay into the future, but I kind of equate it to a similar thing of, I'm not going to wait until my kids are 18 to tell them that, now is the time to start thinking about going to college or what you're going to do with your life. But like reinforcing the ideas about education from day one, through their entire life. So it just becomes ingrained in them that this is the way it is. And then they will have the physical thing to go back to, when I pass on or when they're older or whatever, they will have those notes to go back and have a tangible piece of evidence or memory that can, hopefully help them in some way in their life, or, just even give them a positive.
Plus another aspect of like high masculinity, and I don't mean to throw that term around like, the hyper masculine people are fucking assholes. Like, that's not what I'm saying. But another thing that comes out of that sort of thing we're talking about is not communicating emotions, and not communicating maybe some of one's inner world and inner thoughts and feelings about another person, positive or negative. And just to see I'm sure you're not perfect, not saying that, but like to see a really mature and also lasting and thought out version of communicating and I wonder, I'm curious actually, do you ever communicate or open tough discussions with those notes, or is it always just kind of like, hey man, just checking in, love you, and that type of thing?
What do you mean by tough discussions?
It, well, it doesn't really matter. Never mind. But I guess my point is just I think it's awesome that another way to communicate, thoughts and feelings towards someone. I think the world can always use more of that. It's kind of what I guess what Ron and I are doing here with people like yourself. It's a huge value of mine and Ron's, and celebrating that you did that, I guess.
No, yeah, and I think that on the subject of like what the notes entail, and I mean, I think I've been doing this for years, so I don't remember every single note, but like,
yeah,
I just try to convey whatever's going on, and some of that stuff could be, I think the color of your skin is beautiful, and you should think it's beautiful, and it could be something like that. It could be something as simple as "I love you," but it also, there's been notes where I talk about fear, and I have fear around things and anxiety around things and all of those things, and that's okay. And I think I've written stuff on hard work, and so yeah, I don't know, that like it's not all just like, hey, I love you and you're special and you're wonderful.
Right, yeah.
A lot of it is that, but some of it is also just like maybe around the time that I met you, Ron, that Odin, my youngest, who's 7 right now, was really struggling with starting judo. And I knew that it had nothing to do with judo itself, and just his fears around meeting new people, other people telling him what to do, those sorts of things. And, to a point where he would, kind of break down in tears, and he couldn't do things. And I wrote notes around that, around going through that experience, showing up every day, facing your fears, doing those sorts of things, and letting him know that like I wasn't going to relent in what I was going to require of him, and things that I wanted to face. I was going to do it with love and empathy and kindness and whatever, but we're going to show up to judo every day until you start doing this. And that to me is just as important as, hey, you don't want to do this, and like come sit in my lap and I'll let you back out of it or whatever.
So part of my story, Nick, is because of the way I grew up without a dad, and the stepdad who wasn't as present, or as he could have stepped up in some ways. He was a nice guy. He wasn't a bad guy. He's nice, but he had his stuff. I wanted to be a dad pretty young in my life. And after I got a divorce from a girl I married when I was very young, we got a divorce in our mid-20s. I started dating a girl that I had known from before. At the time, I was living in England working for a car company. She was living here in Portland. We started a long distance relationship, and she had a child who, and I had known her previous to her getting pregnant. I told her, that boyfriend you're hanging around, like, don't be around him. He's got, this is not going to end well. She ends up getting pregnant with him, and he bounced as soon as he got pregnant, or she got pregnant, and he just like hit the ejector seat, was out. And just kind of through some accidents, we got reconnected. And when I started dating her, I thought, oh gosh, like this isn't just dating a girl. This is dating a person who has a person who needs a person. Her child needs a person in his life.
Yeah.
And I felt that moment. Well, first of all, I read a quote that said a man who dates who pursues a single mom is like a dog chasing a car. They don't know what they're really going to get into if that dog were to ever actually catch the car.
Yeah.
And I I had this moment. I was leaving my office in England, walking through the car park, and I made this decision that I was ready to be a dad. I was probably 27, 28 at the time. And I knew I was getting the gift of fast tracking fatherhood, where I was going to enter into this child's life when he was pretty young, but, or, two. So I got to skip a few years. Right. And when I started this, with journey with him, I got the gift that the birth dad was never in the scene. My son has no working memory of life before me. He started calling me dad really quickly, and it was almost like I had just shown up, like off the streets to him, and he just was like, great, you're dad. And we have been that ever since. And I went through the formal process of adoption, all those things. Why do I bring that up? Well, because I have these high hopes and dreams of being a dad. And one of those things was the kindness, gentleness, love, self-control, encouragement, all those things that I had hoped for. But there was another part of me that I didn't realize, which was what was going to come up, which was an insane temper, a temper that would scream and bellow at my kid and scare him, and I never struck him, but I definitely bullied him when he was a little guy, 3, 4, 5 years old. And I thought at that time in my life that maybe one of those reasons I did that was because of the influence of alcohol. And I did drink. I did a lot of secret drinking, a lot of hidden drinking, a lot of benders, a lot of binge drinking. And I thought, well, this is something. It hit me one day when I had several moments of him calling me out in a cute way. He wasn't trying to say I had a drink. He probably was like, Dad, you always have a beer in your hand. And instead of laughing and going, haha, you're right, I'm Homer Simpson, I just screamed at him out of my own guilt, my own shame. And then something struck me. I had the gift one day of a realization that came to me that said, this boy, when he enters into manhood, will wonder why his birth dad left, and will wrestle with the mystery of a person deciding not to be in his life. He does not need more bullshit from the guy who did decide to be his dad and who was then an asshole to him. He does not need that confusion. And I, at that point in my life, decided to stop drinking. And I went into that whole process, and it helped. It helped. I was still an asshole to him sometimes. And I realized that I realized I had an anger problem, and I had an anger problem at the most helpless person I knew, the most vulnerable person I knew. And that made me feel like a piece of shit, like a real, actual piece of shit of a human. And I was talking to, I think my mom about it. I said, I think I might have an anger problem. And she laughed at me. She's like, yeah, you might. and I go, and I just didn't know what to say. And she goes, have you apologized to him? And he was maybe 6, 7 years old at the time. He's 14 now. And I said, no, but I will. And that started, that was really when things began to turn around my anger, around my own inability to control anger or to process that anger in a healthy way, was me having to look at my son in the eye and say, the way I treated you was not okay. And it took more years, but to just tell them, I love what you said earlier about how you feel, actually how you feel, your own full grown emotions. And that has been such a huge step for him and I, and for myself, to realize that number one, being honest about how I was feeling rather than hiding into the shame. was a big thing. Apologizing, making amends, apologizing again and again, even though I've keep messing up. And in seeing him apologize to me has then I've seen changed his life in the sense that he is a kid who can admit his faults, admit his mistakes, and enter into relationships and do relationships where he can own his shit. And so I bring all of that up to bare my soul a little bit, to ask you, knowing what you went through as a kid, did any of those old patterns want to resurface in your psyche and in your subconsciousness, with whether through anger or frustration or your inability to perceive the solution to situations? And if so, how did you deal with it? How did it kind of start to get dealt with?
Yeah, same, very similar experience.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't even think like it was something that crossed my mind until you're in it. When you have these experiences where, I just screamed at my kid for whatever, the basement's not clean, or, they're being too loud or whatever it is. And every single time that happened, which was pretty infrequent, but still happened nonetheless.
Yeah.
And I would think back on my parents, because, or at least my former stepfather and my mom, because that's what they did to me. They also obviously hit me and abused me, but I've never hit my kids, but I was doing some of the same things, yelling, screaming at them. And then one of the things I also realized, probably maybe just because I thought they were too young, or just it didn't happen with me, was this idea of circling back with them and checking in with them, and like circling back with myself and checking in with myself about, I think you're right. We're all fallible, and we're going to make mistakes, and we're going to let our emotions get the best of us. And I would see that in my kids. My kids would throw stuff across the room, storm upstairs, slam the door, do all the things, and, I think early on, my initial response from what I had learned was, oh, you're not going to do that in my house. I'm not going to let you do that.
Yeah.
Then just taking a step back and saying, well, they're having an emotional response, and they're expressing that in one of the ways that they know how, and probably also because that I've displayed that.
Yeah, that's right.
I wasn't going through the house slamming doors or anything like that, but if I'm yelling at them because they didn't clean up their toys or something like that, it's a very similar thing. And so I always, this stuff is always a journey. It's never a, like, this one thing.
No, definitely. Yeah.
It's fixed. You think about things, and you're kind of, I think if you care about being a good parent and self-reflection and improving yourself, as we're all talking about, I kind of started that same road. Why am I doing this? How is it helpful to what I want to get done and what I'm asking my kids to do, and how is it helpful to them? And but also, I think that gave me maybe for the first time that idea of like, it's okay to do that and recognize that I've made a mistake and recover from it. And as a owner of a gym and a fitness person, we would often say to people that, if you're on a diet and you go on a bender and you eat a bunch of junk food, it doesn't mean that it's all over and you might as well just give up. You've got another meal coming up, you've got another day coming up, and you can continue on. And taking something like that and the things that, the mistakes that I make as a parent and those sorts of things, was helpful to be like, okay, I've made this mistake. I've yelled at my kids or whatever. And, it doesn't mean it always has to be this way. And then I think the big piece of it is I had this experience like you where with the apology and the apology to my kids for doing it, which I never had that experience from my parents apologizing to me for things that they had done or failed to do. And in the process of making this this film and dealing with some of the things coming out of that, I was in this process of reconnecting with my biological father, who I hadn't spoken to in almost a decade, maybe 8 years or so, and thinking about what I wanted from him, and you know, why was I not talking to him? You know, why had I cut him out of my life? And really what I wanted. And one of the things that kept coming back to me was I wanted him to recognize the mistakes that he made. I wanted him to be held to account to that. He couldn't go back and fix any of that, but I had this nagging question in my mind of like, now as an old man, does he think about his failures as a parent? You know, he had all through these years, he would occasionally try to reach out to me and reconnect or whatever. And I just had that question, and that made me think about my relationship with my kids more, and, you know, recognizing that, like, if I'm going to reconnect with my father, and if I'm going to hold him to account or expect that he hold himself to account, am I doing that with my kids? And even in a much smaller thing of, I screamed at you in the car because you're being too loud, or whatever it is. Do I have the ability to circle back in an hour or the next day and say, that wasn't the best way to handle that I made a mistake, and I recognize that, and that we can move forward. And so that's kind of where, you know, I think our experiences and journeys overlap, and I do have that same thing. I also, I mean, I guess have been sober for maybe coming up on 3 years now. And I didn't have a lot of like negative experiences with alcohol as they related with my kids, but I did recognize that the amount of drinking that I was doing wasn't doing anything positive for me as a father, or for my kids. And even if that meant I was just a little more tired the next day when I woke up, or wasn't able to drive them somewhere because I had one too many beers or whatever it was, I had a moment as well where I was like, why am I even doing this anymore? And I took my last drink of alcohol almost 3 years ago. And
congrats, man.
Yeah, I don't miss it at all. I don't know that it was adding anything to my parenting. Yeah.
Did you some people like just decide and they're done, and that's, and you know, God bless you guys who can do that. Some people read a book. There's a couple books that come to mind. The Naked Now is a really effective book. Sober Curious. I've heard a lot of people have success with that as well, where they read it and then their brain understands the consequences, long-term, short-term, you know, all of the promises that alcohol has, and then and they're like a bad father, inability to fulfill them, and they read that book and just like, sweet, and they stop drinking. Others like myself started and stopped multiple times throughout life, recognizing times when this has gotten out of hand, and then found relief through some kind of support system. I personally did. I leveraged that support system for a long time. I check in with that support system from time to time now. There are periods of time where I'll check in pretty frequently, and periods of time where it goes months between visits with meetings with AA. So for you, where did you land on that spectrum, and has it been an easy journey for you?
I'm a cold turkey person.
Yeah, lucky bastard.
I had a feeling. Yeah.
I make a decision to do something, and it's, I mean, yeah, it's just like, I'm going to do this thing. And I will say that, you know, I used to dip Copenhagen when I was in the war, and particularly when I was deployed. And
don't they just give that to you stuff when like give you all your gear? It's just like
right,
here's
yeah,
some Copenhagen.
the log of Copenhagen. And
Yeah.
you know, after my second tour in Iraq, while I was there, you know, I told myself, if I make it out of here alive, when I get back to the States, I'm going to take my last one, and I'm never going to do it again. And I did. Got back, landed in North Carolina, offloading on the airplane, getting our gear, waiting for the buses to pick us up, and I took my last one, and I never had one since. You know, and that was 14 years ago, I guess now. And alcohol, it was sort of the same thing. The difference, I guess, now is that like I don't know if I will never drink alcohol again. I don't have I didn't have a plan to say I'm quitting alcohol and I'm never drinking again. When it happened, I was just kind of like, I'm drinking too much, and I'm not getting anything positive. We were out on a family trip in Colorado, and I was like, when I get back from Colorado, I'm just going to take a week off. Got back from Colorado, took a week off. It turned into a month, 3 months, a year. And I don't know that there's been a time where I've missed it. I mean, I had all of the probably natural things that people who drink kind of go through, that like, what am I going to do when I go out to a bar? Or somebody invites me to drinks, or are people going to make fun of me? How am I going to make it through Christmas or Thanksgiving or all of these things? And I don't know. I just found out like nobody really gives a fuck what you're drinking.
Yeah.
I'm having a Coke or a seltzer water or whatever I'm having. Like I can still go to a bar and order a whatever, or I can still, you know, go through Christmas Day and have water and be perfectly fine. And actually, it's probably made all of those experiences even better for me.
Do you have a similar experience with that, Ronald? Like as far as that's concerned?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot of fear. I remember, the first time it hit me, the fear of like, what am I going to do, was when I was, ironically, taking my kids camping with another dad. Like another dad and I and our boys went camping. And I went to the grocery store to get, s'mores stuff, hot dogs, like all the camping food. And I subconsciously ended up over by the beer aisle, and this would have been when I would have like bought a case of beer or something. And I was like looking at it and like kind of unsure what to do. I know I'm here for a reason. I don't know why. And then it kind of had this response of sadness that's like, oh, it's gone. This doesn't get to come with me. And so I had a moment like, oh, this is the first time ever that I'm going camping without alcohol. But since then, the reality is, I went on a date night at a bar the other night with my wife, and we sat at the bar, and I had a soda water and bitters, and feel like an adult, and can enjoy myself, and don't have any fear of what people think of me or any of those things, and never fear getting into the car, because I know that I'm, really, really good, and know that I'm also not going to make some terrible remark to my wife that I used to when I drank and want to pick a fight, or feel like I could fight more, feel like I was smarter than her. That all came with drinking. And so it's great. I mean, there's and I've had several friends who, man, I'm jealous of you, Nick, guys like you who've just were like, this doesn't seem to be adding anything into my life, and they've been able to like just cut that out with discipline. And unfortunately, have never been that kind of a disciplined person. And so I'm really jealous. Man, Nick, I don't know what else to keep going on, because there's more. There, you have a really rich, beautiful, like just life that I'm really curious about. And we didn't get in at all about your business, about your career as a competitive weightlifter. That I know we could talk tons about. I know we could have talked about outdoors and some of those other things, and even just some of your experiences in the military. But I'm really grateful for your experiences and your wisdom as a father, and as someone who has clearly changed the script that the universe was trying to hand to you in a negative way in the beginning of your life. And you have been so conscious about changing that. And that's what I wanted to talk about today with you, and I'm grateful that you shared so vulnerably. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And
good,
your
man.
kids are lucky to have you, and you're lucky to have them. And and we're lucky to hear that story as well. So very grateful to you about that. And I always kind of try to end our talks with giving you the opportunity to tell someone, to give them the clue on like what the next right step for them might be, whether it's as a parent, and you could go wherever you want, whether it's as a parent, as a person who's thinking about quitting drinking, whether it's a person who needs to get help mentally. um, if someone's like sitting here listening going, man, I know I need to change. You hinted at it earlier in the conversation, but if they're sitting here going, I need to do something differently, what would you say to that person right now? And I especially love, by the way, what you talked about with person going on a bender with food.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to thank both of you for inviting me on, and it's wonderful to talk to you. And I will say that I'm, you know, personally, I find the like weightlifting stuff and all that is like a boring part of my life. I enjoy it.
Well, I'm glad we didn't talk about it then.
Yeah, like,
That's cool.
I love doing that, and it's good for me. But like, I love being a parent. I love being a father. I love talking about being a father and being a parent and that journey, and what it's done for me. And I'm glad that we got to talk about that a little bit. And I certainly could continue to talk about that for a long time. Um, I guess to answer your question, I would just say that like, be purposeful. You know, whatever it is that you're trying to do or accomplish or stop doing, you know, do it with a purpose. And I think when I really had that epiphany about fatherhood and parenting, you know, when that epiphany is probably um, not the right word, because really it's a journey, and I don't want to make it sound as if I have it all figured out or anything.
Yeah.
But what I do think that I have figured out is that I want to parent with a purpose. And you know, we are fortunate to live in a time where people like you all are making podcasts. There's books. There's so many different resources, and fathers and mothers as well, but certainly fathers are beginning to um, want to have these conversations and talk about these things. And but if fatherhood's not your thing, if it's something else, you know, if you are being purposeful about your approach to starting your business, running your business, stopping drinking, you know, getting help or whatever, I think that's going to take you a long way. And
Can you like, I know we've talked about it for an hour or so, but father with a parent with a purpose, what would you say that purpose is, if you could sum it up pretty briefly? How would you articulate that?
um, I mean, I don't know if you can articulate that. I mean, I would say that like it's kind of one of those things that you will know it when you see it. But you know, every day that I wake
Nice.
up and I'm with my kids, I feel like my kids are thriving. They're not
Yeah.
just thriving. They didn't just make it through another day. I didn't just throw crap food on the table and turn on the TV. That they seem to be happy. Ultimately, you know, I think if they're pursuing the things that they want to pursue in their life as they age and get older, and um, there's a level of interdependence, I guess not independence, that they see themselves as interdependent and in their world, the community they live in, their family, their friends, whatever that happens to be, that's a success for me. I don't have any specific, you know, you got to get straight A's or you got to be a national
Yeah.
champion or you got to get into a certain school or have a certain career. Those things don't matter to me. Are you a good brother, parent, partner, you know, are you working hard at the things that you want to do in your life, whether that's being an astronaut, running your business, being a stay-at-home dad as they get older. And right now in school, are they showing up? Are they doing their best? Are they making an effort in the things that they do in their life? And those are all signals for me is that doing some of the right things. And if they're emotionally connected to be able to see their see the benefit in having these kinds of conversations, showing love, crying, showing, being connected with the full range of emotions, both as a kid and as they age and become adults. I would be tremendously happy, as feeling like I did mostly the right things. I know I'm not going to do all of the right things, and I know some of that is out of my hands, but that emotional connectivity, that interdependence, that focus and hard work and stuff is really important.
That's great, man.
Man, appreciate your time today, Nick. This has been a real gift, and I don't know, like part of me wants to keep nerding out for a couple more hours on dad stuff. Maybe we'll have you back and just deep dive on dad strategy.
Again, I thank you both for reaching out. This is
definitely
great. We didn't even get to talk about Magnus and the pronouns and all kinds of.
Well, I mean, look, dude, we're not in a terrible hurry. I think that's I've got the time if you've got the time, and if you want to talk about the pronouns, I think that was something I'm really curious about. It's more and more it's coming up right in our world, and I was thinking about that, like Magnus having the safety for him or they to explore that. And so tell us about that.
So as you said, this is the pronoun piece of it, and the gender identity is all something that I am learning as a middle-aged guy and growing up in a vastly different world and working in a different world where that kind of talk and conversation was not really being had, and really being raised in a really racist, homophobic, misogynistic environment. A lot of those things I carried with me into my adulthood and probably even into some of my parenting years. And as we talked about earlier, wanting to break away from that, I think the pronoun thing would have been the furthest thing on my mind, that like I would be directly faced with having that relationship with my son. And a few years ago, Magnus and Odin go to a school here in Portland, the Portland Waldorf School, and I think they had someone come into Magnus's classroom and just talk about some of these self-identification topics in the class. I wasn't there, so I don't even really know what the conversation was. And I don't even know if that's where it started for them, but Magnus, in a conversation with them about their day and what was happening at school, we had a short conversation about that, and they told me that they had this and that they had this conversation in their classroom, and that their pronouns were he, him, they, them. And I didn't kind of give it that much attention. It was just like, okay, I know that this is going on. It's going on in Portland and in the broader and other communities in Portland, and kind of just left it at that, and was still, referring to him as he, him, and he didn't, or they didn't have a problem with that or anything. And at the beginning of their second grade year, Magnus is in fourth grade now, when I would go to school to pick them up, It was probably early fall, late summer, so maybe it was a little bit chilly in the morning, but by the afternoon it was warm enough that you didn't need to wear a sweatshirt anymore. And I noticed that Magnus was tying their sweatshirt around their waist and playing. And I would ask them if they wanted me to hold their sweatshirt for them. And they'd always tell me no, guys, it's fine or whatever. And I think after a couple of weeks of seeing that, I would see them twirling around on the playground and kind of doing this thing and like really playing with the sweatshirt and like, I don't know. And I felt like I needed to have a conversation with them about it. And so we got into the car and I just asked them directly, like, do you want to wear a skirt? Do you want to wear a dress?
Wow.
And their initial response to me was something like, oh, like, I like the way that my sweatshirt twirls or something like that.
Yeah.
And, so they weren't like just, hey, I'm coming to you with this.
Yeah.
I'm making this change and here it is. It was kind of like, they were still somewhat, I don't know that they knew how to even talk to me about it yet.
Yeah.
Brought that up. So I believe the next thing that happened is I had a conversation with their mom. As I highlighted before, we're divorced and we live in different households. And I had a conversation with her and I said, I don't know asked her if she was seeing anything. And of course she said, yeah, there's some things that I'm seeing or whatever. And I said, hey, well, I think it's important for me to buy them their first skirt. And like, I don't want this to be, this is something your mom deals with. Talk to her about it, whatever. I'm like, I think it's really important that I do this and that they get to see that it comes from me and that I'm okay with it. And she agreed. And we didn't have a conversation with them or anything. I think I went to a local Goodwill and found a skirt off the rack just in case I was way off base with my fashion decisions or anything like that. And found a cheap skirt and I brought it home, something that I thought that they would like. And whenever the next time I saw them, either when they came from their mom or after school, I showed it to them and they put it on instantly and danced around the house and were like, it was like one of the greatest gifts that they had gotten.
Wow.
And I knew, I just was like, okay, that's great. And
yes, man.
And so that kind of happened.
Incredible.
Yeah. It was a really, really profound experience for me. And it was just really profound to see that like that we had that connection and that it happened. And after that, we his mom and I, or their mom and I, had this conversation about what are we going to do now? Are we going to have a conversation, whatever? And we just kind of agreed that like we don't need to have a conversation about it. Like Magnus is who they are, and they may not even know what they're experiencing or what they're going through. And we didn't want to put them in a place of assigning anything to this, their sexuality, their gender identity. Is this a fashion statement? Any of those things, and make them decide right now who they are. And as we've been talking about almost this entire time, it of course made me, be a little bit introspective about my beliefs and experiences and, who I am. And really this thing that adults do and kids probably do, where we have to fit things into categories. They have to be defined, and I get that a lot now from other adults who want to know, what Magnus is. And I try to push back and just, Magnus is Magnus, and that doesn't need to be defined right now. They may not be able to define that. Maybe this is a sexuality thing. Maybe it's a fashion statement. Maybe it's a gender identity. Maybe Magnus is they, them today, and 5 years from now, they'll be he, him, or something else. And that's been our approach ever since. And, that is 180-degree different from my
God.
earlier thoughts and beliefs around that. I have my oldest brother is gay, and my parents hammered into us growing up that was wrong, that he was wrong, that there was something wrong with that you're a bad person, all those things. So I grew up with the belief that if you were homosexual, that you were living in sin. I'm not a religious person or anything like that, but I never had really had to confront that at all. As an adult, I began to, as I separated myself from my parents, began to not believe those things, but I didn't have to face those things head on in such a close and intimate way with, another person in my life. It was just almost always at a distance. It was always at a distance. And, that experience with Magnus changed that for sure.
That's powerful. That's a really
great
powerful
story, man.
I'm so glad you
Yeah,
we didn't stop that, because that's amazing.
You're a really good dad, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you're Rick Solid Gold. I mean, top of the podium all the time.
I do. I mean, I will say I'm still learning, and I stumble sometimes. And, we'll refer to Magnus as he or him, and Magnus is at a place now that if I do that or somebody else does that, they'll correct him. And I'm glad that they are comfortable enough to do that, and secure enough that they feel like they can do that with me and with other people in their life for sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's going to be a powerful story for them, that their father, once they're old enough to realize who you are a bit more. I think our kids will never know exactly who we are. Like, we will never know exactly who our parents are, but we get broad strokes. And knowing the broad strokes of your life, where you came from, I think will be really empowering for them at some point in the future, and give them a lot of bravery and tons of agency to continue to make big, bold choices that towards the life that they want and the life they're meant to have. And what I mean by that, meant to have, I mean they're capable of having. Because I think we're all capable of having whatever we want, but the confines of our story, our experiences, keep us small for a variety of reasons. But to have such a bold, defining, maybe those words aren't the right way, such a wonderful, I'm just gonna say that, is such a positive experience of you saying, I'm actually going to be the one who's going to empower Magnus with this, and you walking through the store and picking out something that's affirming and loving and kind, and probably just a lot of damn fun, right?
It's like a scene out of a movie,
Yeah, it is. And
it's awesome.
And I think about my kids when they're just delighting in something and they're having a good time. And I was imagining that for Magnus, how that had to have been, and probably still is, just an incredible gift. So
for both of you, that moment when they're trying on their skirt for the first time, and that must have just been, I mean, you didn't know what to expect, right? You were kind of like shooting from the hip a little bit.
Right. No,
it's cool, man.
Yeah, it was deeply, deeply touching, and parents obviously, can spend a lot of time questioning whether or not they're doing the right thing, and then there are those moments where you just know that you did the right thing, and you can sort of pat yourself on the back, and I really think that back to our earlier conversation and about what people can do. I just think that like, again, this is a journey for me to get to that place, and a journey that I'm still on, but like, I think it's so important that men get comfortable doing things like that, and speaking up about things that we are told or are raised to believe are not masculine or not things that men do. And I think that would go a really, really long way to making men and women for sure, and our if you have daughters or sisters, or wives and partners and stuff, but certainly for men that they see that other men by any other definition, are okay with having this conversation, seeing their sons for who they really are, or who they want to be in the moment. And if somebody would have done that for me, or people would have done that for me, I probably would have, sought help sooner, probably would have been a better husband and father and friend and all of those things a lot sooner than, waiting till every crisis or major event in my life was bearing down on me and forcing me to focus on some of these things. And we just don't do it enough. So,
man, but you did do it. And there is a plaque over my surname in England, and it says Sero sed serio, which means late but in earnest. And I think about that a lot with our decisions in life. Like, we could make bad decisions for a long time, and really what matters is what we're gonna do at any moment, right? The universe or fate or whatever you want to call it is constantly giving us the signals like, hey, you can make a different decision at this moment right now.
Exactly.
And you did. And then you are continuing to, every time you write a note, every time you are affirming your children with your words and your actions and your deeds, and telling your story. I was also just thinking about who needs to hear this right now. What gruff dad is sitting there wrestling with some similar experience in his life, and also maybe he's like further on. Maybe his child's a teenager or in their 20s, and he's wrestling with their dynamics. I don't know, but I would hope that they'd hear your story and go, Nick can do this, and I can do this. And I think that's the magic. That's the real actual magic of telling our story, is that it moves invisibly through space, hits someone else's ears, and changes their actions. And that's rad. That is like actually cool. Yeah, that's amazing. That is so cool. That is a real gift to get to hear. And God, I'm just grateful we didn't miss that one.
Yeah. Good call.
Yeah. Gosh, anything else, Nick? You got any other gold nuggets like that I don't want to pass over, dude?
No, I think we're good.
All right, man.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Thank you again. Thank you both for reaching out and taking the time.
Awesome.
Great conversation. I, of course, want to give a plug to Jason Hanasick, who made the film, A Child on Fire. He's got some other short docs out there on other people, and
awesome.
We'll link to it in our show notes on our website, and we'll send you the link to this one so you got it. And man, thank you so much. Appreciate you, dude.
Yeah, thank you.
A big gift. Thanks a lot, Nick. Man, take care. Okay.
All right. Take care, Nick. Thank you.
And that's beautiful. You want to go straight into the field dressing?
I need to take a leak. Can you give me 5?
Yeah, I do too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks,
yeah.
All right, brother Bear.
Man, I'm so glad I didn't hang up. Glad I did move on too quickly. Gosh, thank God he
we're not
said
recording,
something.
right?
Yeah, it's all recorded. Yeah.
We're not recording right now.
Oh,
right?
we're totally recording right now, so we totally see your groin.
I wasn't thinking that as much as I wanted to say something.
Well, we could start the we could
No.
include this part.
I don't want to be recording right now. I wanted to say something between you and I. Okay, sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just cut it out. I'm not going to include this.
So we are still recording.
We are recording, but I don't have to. I'll like cut it out so you can say whatever you want to say.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Huh, okay. You're getting good at your editings.
Yeah. Trying to.
Are you really? Is like you getting it down a little bit?
A little bit, yeah. Like I'm learning as I go, and yeah. Why? What's up?
Yeah. When you were like went back into it, we were just about to go.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I don't want to keep talking, you know?
Oh, I know. Yeah.
I just really, I don't know. I just felt like a good place to end. And once again, man, I was dead wrong. That was like the best part of the whole thing.
I know, man. That was the same. Like I was like, it's time to go. Like you kind of feel the expiration date, you know?
Yeah.
And then you're like, whoa. Cause he said, I was waiting for him to kind of bring it up. I mean, it feels like such a sensitive thing that I don't, and I was like kind of put him on the spot with like, hey, I was an asshole to my kids yelling. How about you?
Yeah.
I was a little worried about that.
You did a good job, man. You said you had some ways to bring those things up gracefully, and you did it twice with two different subjects, and I was like, nice job, man. I thought you did a really good job with that.
Okay, well, let's start the field dressing, all right? Because I don't want to get too excited and
no, let's go. I'm totally with you. Let's do it.
Yeah. Welcome to the field dressing. Today we talked to Nick Hurndon, who was the feature in Childhood on Fire, a story about childhood abuse, where he's actually set on fire as a child, and a dad who is completely changing the way he grew up and moving into an incredible I don't even know. He's just an amazing dad. He's just a badass dad. You said it. You're like, Nick, you're an incredible dad. And his story of supporting Magnus and in their journey of their own pronouns is insanely good. Just so good.
He has not every reason, but he has a lot of reasons not to be a good dad. You know what I mean? Like, obviously this stuff that happened.
Yeah.
Right. But
yeah,
he's the epitome in so many people's minds, I'm sure, of a man, with he's a warrior, a patriot, and he is strength training and he's CrossFit, right? He's all this stuff.
Yeah.
And then he's as far away from center as that is far away from center the other way as he's gone to fill out the circumference, like he's you talk about whole being a masculine whole, and it's just like, man, that guy, that's what it looks like.
I mean one thing, and I should have said it at that moment, but when he said to his kid's mother, I think I need to be the one who goes and buys their dress or skirt or whatever, and then he goes and does it. I thought that's got to be one of the bravest things this person's ever done.
Yeah,
like I know he used the words "I love war." I mean that's a word that's a phrase I'll never be able to say in my life, right? I've heard vets say that kind of thing, but that was the level of bravery that I thought was necessary to do what he did. He
had to find the girls section of a Goodwill for his son. It's just on it by himself. I don't know.
Badass is what that is.
And yeah, exactly. Maybe it's not totally clear. I mean, we're talking about things that are hard to understand and hard to, we have a lot of like religious ideas intertwined, and maybe he wasn't, he was doing the action and it was the right thing to do, but who knows if he was even fully fully on board in his mind. Maybe there was parts of him that were like doubting, you know, I don't know, but I just got the sense that people are complicated, you know, but he did it. He walked into that thing and bought the skirt.
Gosh, the hearing how Magnus was just delighted and running around the house and twirling, like, every parent, I don't care, every parent, unless they're just terrible people, like they love making their kids happy. Like there's just nothing better than making your kid laugh, making your kid delighted. It's wonderful. And he gave them that gift. It sounds like he's doing that all the time with the notes and all the other things. I've seen him in the wild with his kids. I showed up to Portland Judo with my kids actually to see if they wanted to go there, and I saw him interacting with his kids, and I was like, there's a dad who knows how to be a dad. I'm gonna go talk to him and get his advice on this journey. And that's how I met him. And right away you just know there's something special about him.
You know, I was watching the little short film, which, you know, so 13 minutes or something.
Yeah.
There's a lot of footage with him and his kids.
Yeah.
And I didn't know the story that we got today about how much being a parent. I mean, it's part of the movie, but you know, come on, we just got like an hour and a half dose of it.
Yeah.
And man, you go back and look at those scenes with his kids, and it's just hard. It's hard. It pulls the heartstrings, and it's amazing. That was great.
It really does. It really does. You know, I think that if you're a guy listening to this, sure, do brave things for your kids and for the sake of your kids, and good things happen. That's for sure.
And if you, and as the person in this conversation, and there's a lot of roles you fulfill in life that I don't. It's one of our dynamics, you know, and one of those roles is family man, right? Family person, have a family, you have kids, you have a wife. And so I translate all these things into how people who don't have immediate nuclear family, they're out on their own, can just translate them into the actions that they can make, you know? And I just think that to take the time to write down your care and your thoughts and your feelings for another person, you know, we can all do that. And I do take time to do that. And every time I do, I don't want to do it. You know, it's just like I got better things to do, which I don't. But that's the thought. And, you know, and also is, I think, this consideration there. You know, it's hard to love ourselves, and it's hard to love maybe people who aren't our kids and our wife with the same level of urgency, you know. Like you're my friend. Like, I love you. And but we don't live together, and we don't even live in the same state anymore. But like there's I could consider yours and my friendship for 20 minutes and then probably come up with something to do that would be really meaningful, you know.
Can't wait to read that note.
We can I'll buy you a skirt, man.
Please.
Ronald twirling in his skirt, happy as he's ever been in his life.
I could see why that would feel so appealing.
Oh my God.
The freedom it's got to feel like.
But you know, you get my point though, is just there's so many fucking opportunities for us to express care and knowing and respect. I kept wanting to talk about, I'll mention it many times in our episodes here, but that book, The Art of Love, it's such a powerful book because it broke love down into 4 really simple terms that had teased out definitions, and it was respect, knowing, caring, and responsibility. It was like, that's love. And the gist of each one of those, because first gloss, you know, you'd think, well, some of those are the same thing, but they're kind of not, you know. And knowing someone is like knowing who they are inside, and you can predict it. You know, you just know this person.
Well, that's Nick watching his kid on the playground. Like, I mean, just deciphering these like little things that some folks would, like maybe a teacher or somebody who doesn't know the Magnus very well, like, but he's like, oh, holy shit. I mean, he was like cutting it for science so hardcore in that moment, like really interpreting all those little signals. Yeah. Go ahead. No,
that's a great point. And I wasn't really thinking, no, please, I'm sorry. I'm excited.
No, I'm done. Yeah, go ahead.
But the four things, he almost is exhibiting all of those in that little story he told, because the other one, and the one of my, and the favorite one of mine of all those is the respect one. And the word respect, that's SPEC, respect, T, probably the T too, spect, it connects to like spectacle and its eyes, and
really?
you're
Okay,
looking.
interesting.
And yeah, and so when you're respecting someone in, as per the definition of this book, when it's talking about it, it's like giving them the space and looking at them, and just observing, get the room. It's like giving them room and seeing them fill that space with themselves, and just allowing it. It's like allowance. I feel and he was doing that by watching, like, do you want me to take that? And then he was like watching, just watching them and watching them twirl the thing,
Yeah.
And then, anyways, I keep going, but then he's doing more by going and following up with that, and his wife. He hits all of it, and I was like, that's his purpose, man. His purpose is to love all those things, care, respect, know, his kids. That was his purpose in my mind, at least, the way I was referring.
So good. That's really, really good.
Fucking awesome, man. What an amazing dude.
Yeah. I was thinking of how parallel in some ways it was to our previous interview with Richard, and how both of them had come out from childhoods that were really tough, and both of them deciding to take action and to change those things. Powerful, really, really powerful. Man, well, thank you for joining me today, and what a gift to get to do this together, dude. Can't wait for the next one.
Again.
Yeah. All right,
man.
Okay, let's do the next one. Let's do the cutting for sign for Richard.
What did he
Richard Sherman, is that his name? Sherman?
No, Hubbard.
Hubbard.
Hubbard, yeah.
Hubbard. Old Mother Hubbard.
God, that was a good one, man. Because we're not recording yet, right?
We are, but we're not going to start the thing yet. Yeah.
What's his name? Nick. Nick was a slow burn. Did you feel that?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Slow burn. Yeah.
I was like, all right, you were kind of like, I don't know, you were kind of mellow, and he was, and then I was just like, does this suck? And then it was just like 10, 20 minutes later, it was a little more. Yeah, that was cool, man.
Yeah. All right. The reason I clap is because I can see the sound waves on the thing, and that lets me know where we're going to start.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Right. Welcome to Cutting for Sign Field Dressing. Today we interviewed Richard Hubbard, the first ex-monk that I've ever had the pleasure of getting to sit down and talk to. Zen monk, anyway, Buddhist monk.
Do you lose your monkhood when you leave the monastery? Is that how it works?
It's got to be like a gang. Like once you're a monk, you're always a monk. I don't know.
Something like that,
I mean, it's
funny because if you're go ahead.
I mean, he's sitting there. He looks monk-like. He's got no hair. He's like really regal looking in his like sweater when we were speaking to him. And I was like, and then of course he's super wise, so he starts to break things down. I was like, oh, I'm listening to a monk right now, like that. Like I'm listening to the sage. Like I'm leaning in and wondering what he's going to say next and the bits of wisdom he's going to drop on us.
Oh, that was cool. That was a really good story, man.
Yeah, really cool.
Hearing about his time. Yeah. What did you think, man?
Well, one of the things he kind of glossed over, but was in the back of my mind, and if you're listening to this and didn't catch it, like he struggled with substance abuse in his 20s, and that's what led. Of course, he did, because he had such a shitty childhood, and when you don't have the tools, you're going to look for anything you can to help numb the pain, separate yourself from the pain, heal the pain. You don't know what you're doing. You're just trying to get away from it, trying to make it be different. And he boldly found this at 27 years old, a monastery, and decided to practice, like really give himself over to the effort and discipline of that.
When he gave me his information, I know he'd be okay with me sharing this because he gave me the information to put into his intro, but we didn't talk about it, and I didn't include it in the intro. But he said that his folks were pretty deep into drugs, at doing and I believe sell. I don't want to get too far, but they had a life in that world. And then that his near death experience that we also didn't talk about was because of a drug deal gone bad. So
Oh,
he's
geez.
got a whole nother life that we didn't
Yeah.
touch on at all, outside of.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what kind of, you and I are really lucky to get to read his material before for the general public will, with it being in the writing
Keep
group with
waiting
him.
for him to get to this
And
stuff, you know what I mean? I was even asking him about it. It's like, we're winding up, man.
yeah,
Let's see. And then
yeah.
he dropped a couple of them, like the machete thing. I was like, okay, yeah, okay, got it.
Dude, that's intense. That is a very intense
Sad.
situation. Oh my gosh. What was beautiful was his, I mean, there's a lot of beautiful things. One thing that I'm really remembering is him going through that bout of pain, which thankfully I've never been through, and then that soul hunger he had, like, what's next for my life? Like, what am I gonna do next? What am I gonna step into next? And him finding that, which I think the universe does for us, dropping those little things and opening some little door, noticing that little word on the wall or movie or whatever it is, and he saw, he felt it, and he did something about it. And who knows how long it was before he was on the airplane going to San Francisco. But what a gift to him, right? To then go into that room and then see the same faces that he saw in that film, that
That's
documentary,
the real deal,
the work,
right.
Gosh, even that moment, that's like the moment where he's like, holy shit, I'm on the right path. Like, this is
brother,
it.
I got a decent story actually where I had a similar experience. But it doesn't involve trauma or anything. It's just it's dance. And I was getting into dance in 2015, and I'd gotten out of a marriage, and I just like had this upwelling and resurgence of this desire and love for dance that had kind of gone dormant during my marriage, sadly. And so I start looking up blues dancing. I love swing, jazz and blues dancing, swing and blues dancing. And so I'm just looking up, YouTube videos. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where there's blues dancing in Portland or wherever. I don't know anything about it. And the first thing I find online is this YouTube video of this couple dancing in this really cool ballroom. It had like this incredible lighting and this, well, it doesn't matter. It's just a really cool looking ballroom. And I must have watched that freaking blues dance video 20 or 30 times, So then I'd start putting the pieces together, and I find where there's blues dancing in Portland, and then I get into it, and I'm swing dancing and blues dance. I'm dancing like 5 nights a week, taking lessons. And then I have an instructor. We fall in love. Like, my dance instructor falls in love, and she's an international blues dancing teacher, right? And jazz dancing teacher, and she's amazing. And then we start going all over the world. She takes me. I had teaching experience in martial arts, so I was kind of picking up dance quickly, and I started teaching or assisting her teaching. And I mean, we're going everywhere, all these places in Europe and all the United States. It's like a fairy tale, right? And then we're in Denver doing she's teaching like a week-long intensive. And we're going to a dance where she's going to teach and I'm going to assist her. And we walk into the dance, into the ballroom, and we're the teachers. And it's that ballroom from that I watched 20 or 30 times. The very first thing, it's the same lighting, it's the same angle, it's the same everything, but we're sitting at the center teaching. And I was like, holy shit, man.
This is my life.
But it's just one of those.
I've done it.
I was like, yeah, man, it was great. Obviously, Richard's feeling something different when he shows up and it's the whole cast in the movie. But it's the same thing, man. That's cutting.
It's got to be pretty similar to, I mean, in some ways, like, I'm here. I've done it. That's so cool.
Yeah.
And then he's gone on just like you. I mean, like, he is teaching others how to do this. He's going into it, getting in the trenches with them. It's fascinating. It's necessary. I love that this is becoming more common for men to work on their emotional, mental, spiritual side, to call out the abuse, the trauma, the neglect, the things that we don't even know how to put words to. but we know that are affecting us on some level. And I think if you're listening to this, you're dealing with any of that stuff, like, this is your sign, buddy, to do something about it. And you know, when I asked,
like cramming signs down people's
throat. When I asked Richard, I was like, what would you say for the person to do? I loved his answer, that's what I was like, felt like I was around an actual wise monk, was he goes, you know, find what's closest to you and find what speaks to you. And he said, for, you know, because I know people who that's been helpful. Buddhism's been helpful. I know folks that martial arts has been helpful. I know folks that Christianity's been helpful. You know, he didn't say there is a path. Here is the path A, B, and C, and it's going to unlock for you. He said, essentially, now I'm paraphrasing, like, do what lights you up. Find where your bliss is. Find what makes sense to your intuition, to your heart, to your gut. Follow your gut feeling, and go to someone or something that is close to you, familiar and safe.
And that's hard, man, because it's like, okay, follow your gut. Well, I don't know what my gut sounds like. You know what I mean? Like, a person might be thinking that. And so then
I'll give you an example. It is hard, but I'll give you a real example. Like, when I knew I needed to quit drinking, I didn't know what to do. So I sent a text message to a friend of mine. Hey, can we talk? Sure. We have breakfast. And he was like, you know, he looked at me, he's like, have you tried AA? You know, it's just like this shrug, like, you know, and like, he didn't know. And I was like, fuck, I'll do whatever. Okay, sure, I'll give it a shot. And I texted someone else who I did know was in AA. You know, the next morning I'm in a meeting with him. Utterly life-changing. You know, and so it's like, often it just starts with a text to somebody, or the smallest, most innocuous conversations.
I totally agree, man. It's like the smallest little step can lead very quickly to life-changing actions and doors flying open. You know, and it almost, for me, it almost seems like every time I make the right move, it comes from some feeling that's in the periphery, you know? Okay, for you, it came from like, I'm staring at you in your face, you know? But like, I don't know, it comes in all kinds of different ways. But my point is that it's like something that you've known you needed to do for a long time. And then, and it's the easiest thing in the world to not do it. Maybe you don't even have any reason to do it other than, you know, you should, and you had this feeling. But then when you do it, oh my gosh, then it becomes like, sometimes it becomes almost like you can't believe you waited so long. You know?
Well, you and I talk about it all the time. That's writing for me right now, and I think you'd say the same thing for you. It's like, we stepped into this, and just opportunity after opportunity of perfecting our craft is coming up, and exercising it, and it's life-giving. The process is life-giving. It's therapeutic. It's healing. It's joy. It's bliss. But at the beginning, it's the easiest thing not to do. It's way easier not to write.
I've seen it in you, like, almost even more clearly than in my own experience with this writing thing. By writing thing, I mean us having writing projects we've wanted to work on or have been working on for a long time, but have not put off, but we haven't been for years. And then we, you know, I made a phone call. That phone call led to a writing group being created pretty quickly, and one that actually has legs. And you're part of it. You're one of the people I called to see if you want to do it. And, you know, and then, you know, smash cut 4 weeks later, you know, it's like yours in my life. It was such a huge missing piece, or a thirsty plant in the garden of, you know, of our like soul. And it just has, it has taken the water that we've been throwing on it and just come back to life, and brought shade and joy and hopefully fruits. You know, it's just, it's so cool how fast things can change. This is my point.
That's beautiful, man. We get to do this, and that's another awesome thing. The same thing. I mean, you and I have followed the little clues in the past for this podcast, and it just keeps getting better. Like, every time we do one, I'm like, that was the best one. And then we do another one, I'm like, well, maybe that was the best one. I don't know. But I do know every time. Like, shit, this is so good. I mean, when we
let's have a shitty one.
We'll record
just to
us.
keep us honest, you know. I know, yeah. Let's do like a terrible one.
That's great, man. Man, it's a gift to get to do this with you, Daniel. Appreciate you. Love you.
Same way. I love you, brother.
Best. All right. See ya.
Bye, man. See you.